Upon close interrogation, most people can furnish you with the information that Hannibal crossed the Alps with elephants, although some people seem to think that that's all he crossed the Alps with, the way they go on about it. You imagine he was some sort of zookeeper on holiday, but no, he actually had an army of tens of thousands of men with him, and the elephants, there were only 37 of them, they weren't militarily that significant a part of his army, they were more of a symbol perhaps than anything. But what I'm going to talk about is how did he even get to the Alps with his 37 elephants in the first place? Well, first, aged 9, he had to persuade his father to take him with him on campaign in Spain. This he did, and he then spent most of the rest of his life on campaign, becoming really quite an experienced soldier. He became a commander, and by the time he was in his early 20s, he was commanding large numbers of men in the field and scoring victories over the enemies. Then he had to muster a big army in southern Spain and march north, and he then had to march the height of Spain, conquering the northern roughly third of Spain while he was at it, take several cities by storm, and then he had to garrison the place and leave behind him a significant field army to hold the place down. Then he had to get across the Pyrenees. Now, admittedly, the Pyrenees are not really as bumpy as the Alps, but they are still quite bumpy. They're not an insignificant obstacle, and were quite defensible, and if the hostile Gallic tribes in the area had put up a fierce defence in the Pyrenees, he'd have been in trouble. But he managed to get over the Pyrenees with, so far as we know, not too much fuss. Then he had to get all the way across what is today southern France. But back then, rather, was filled with hostile Gallic tribes. Now, some of these he bribed, didn't bribe, no. He gave gifts of friendship to show his good feeling towards them so that he could get through without having to fight a battle. But some of them didn't take his bribe, his gifts, and instead he had to just force his way through, which perhaps was a way of punishing them for not taking the gifts. And so he would just say, right, I've got this huge army with elephants and loads of well-trained, experienced soldiers. Are you really going to try to stop me? Oh, it seems no, you're not. But then he got to the River Rhone. The River Rhone is very wide. He had to cross several other rivers, but this was a tricky crossing for him for several reasons. One, it's a very wide river. Two, he had 37 elephants with him. How do you get elephants across a wide river? There's no bridge, no ferry. Three, he had a Roman army in the search of him, commanded by Publius Scipio's dad, who was called Publius Scipio. And another thing, he also had a hostile tribe of Gauls on the far side of the river who were just waiting there encamped to slaughter his men as they came across. So, yeah, bit of a challenging situation there, I think you'd agree. So, how did he go about it? Well, he sent a load of cavalry south towards what is today Marseille, and they were to find out what the Romans were up to. Meanwhile, he sent about a third of his force north. Polybius says 200 stades, Livy says about a day's march, about 25 miles. A stade it's actually a Greek measurement to do with the running track distance of an Olympic running race, but it's the Roman equivalent of a furlong, so 1/8 of a mile, although don't forget that's 1/8 of a Roman mile, which was a different number of feet. So anyway, they go, say, 25 miles, where they found a reasonably easy crossing place. Apparently there were some islands in the river there which made things easier. So they get across, and then they march south again and get the other side of those encamped Gauls. And then, according to some signal, Polybius has it as a smoke signal, but Livy seems to suggest it was trumpets, but there was a signal of some sort, and Hannibal knew, right, now's the time to cross, because my men are in position on the far side of the enemy camp. Now, how did they get across? Well, he had a number of boats that he got off the local friendly Celts, and he'd also ordered his men to make dugout canoes. Dugout canoes? You couldn't get many men in a dugout canoe. How long does it take to make a dugout canoe? Well, if you've got an army of many tens of thousands of men, and you order them to make dugout canoes, then a couple of days later, and he spent 2 days doing this, 2 days later, you've got an awful lot of dugout canoes. Well, these then started paddling across the river. Now the horses, according to Livy and Polybius, were swimming behind boats with men holding their reins. Although Livy says that there were also saddled and ready to go horses in some boats that were presumably larger and capable of taking at least some horses on the inside of them. So he actually swam a lot of his men across, and he put his bigger boats upstream so that they would calm the water for the smaller boats downstream. You see, always thinking. So it was well coordinated and timed. So as the Celts came out to challenge him, the camp behind them was then suddenly by surprise attacked, and some of them turned round to go back and get their stuff and see to this new threat behind them. And then he was able to get enough men ashore. He put his lights and cavalry on the far bank first and followed up with the heavies. The lights were just to get there as quickly as possible and just hold everything up. And this worked. And after a while, the Celts realised that this guy really knows what he's doing, and they broke and fled. The cavalry, the Numidians, came back having had a bit of a bloody nose in a cavalry skirmish with the Romans. And he realised, I'm in a bit of a hurry then, because Scipio is likely to be coming after me very, very quickly. So how do I get my elephants across? Well, how do you get elephants across a big river? Well, this is the way he did it. He constructed very big rafts, about 50 feet across, roughly square, and he made a few of these and constructed a sort of jetty of them going out into the river with ropes on the upstream side, securing them to strong trees and big hefty things that aren't going to go anywhere to stop the thing being swept away by the force of the current. He then carried on this jetty, but the further things were actually just rafts that were going to carry the elephants across the river. But he made it look as though it was all one continuous jetty, and he put earth on the top of all these rafts to make it look like an extension of land. There you go, elephants. It's just more land. You could just walk out there. You'd be fine. Now accounts vary, but the most plausible account says that the elephants did not like this and did not want to go onto this thing. They looked at all this water and thought, no, I don't fancy this. This doesn't look right at all to me. And they got two females, the matriarchs of the herd, if you like, and led them on. These are more placid, and then the rest of the herd contentedly followed the females along the jetty and onto the rafts, which were then cut adrift. And these were then towed by boats across the river. At least that was the first plan. But the thing is that the elephants panicked. They saw, there's water there. I'll turn around and go, there's water there. The land's going away. Who's taking the land away? I don't like this. And they were milling round and round. Some of them, after a while, were quelled into stillness, but some of them just panicked and could not be stilled, and they went into the water. And the mahouts, a mahout is the man who sits astride an elephant's neck to drive it, and they went into the river as well, and according to Polybius, drowned. Polybius also suggests that maybe one or two of the elephants drowned. He says that almost all of the elephants made it to shore by swimming and using their trunks as snorkels. So almost all of the 37 suggests that maybe 37 didn't make it to the Alps, but we don't have any more evidence than that. But Polybius does just put in one really interesting word in his account. The mahouts who fell into the river and drowned, some of them had come a really long way, because he uses the word Indian. Why were the mahouts Indian? These were African elephants from an African army. Well, elephants had not been used in warfare for all that long. They were introduced into the Mediterranean, in the field of warfare that is, by Alexander the Great after he encountered them in India, or rather his generals who were serving under him, who had encountered them in India. So the ancients had known about elephants, but as wild animals. No one had thought of actually sort of riding them into battle or anything before that. And so how do you tame an elephant? So presumably the mahouts, the elephant trainers of India, had this reputation for being the best or the only. They had the secret of how you tame and train elephants. And so even in Hannibal's time, perhaps the reputation would have been such that, he's got trainers from India to work on his elephant force. So yes, so they had come all the way from India, those men, and had gone all the way across North Africa, all the way up Spain, all the way around through France to drown in the Rhone. A hell of a long way to fill your lungs full of water. Right, that's enough for now, and as always, remember to dry out a tent thoroughly before packing it away for long-term storage. Lindybeige!